Welcome to the American Small Business League podcast. I am Bruce Torres, and with me is Charlie Kim, running for Congress as a Republican in Illinois in the 11th District. And the website to learn more and all about him is charlieincongress.us. Charlie, the major issues, I grabbed the headlines off your website. You're campaigning for freedom for workers and also to promote American business and immigration and U.S. citizenship reform and promoting parental rights, protecting schools and empowering students, and best effective health care and affordable medication and treatment, reimagining public safety and defending the U.S. Constitution, and more. I say all that now at the top so folks can get excited about going to your website. And then we'll talk about the issues that I wrote you about in my letter, bringing us together for this conversation, which is all about the federal contracts that are supposed to go to small businesses, especially women-owned small businesses, and we'll get to that. But first, Charlie, how are you? And then please tell me all about you and why you're running for Congress, what you'd like to do for your district and Illinois and for the nation as a congressman, please.
Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate this opportunity to get to know you as well as the people of your audience. And my particular stance is that I'm running for Illinois 11, and that's a particular district against Bill Foster, who's the current congressman. He's been in there for a period of time, about 13 years. And how I started everything, just to give you the brief of my background, is I came originally from South Korea. I came to the United States when I was 5 years old. I had a very privileged life in South Korea because I had a diplomatic grandparent who was working with the U.S. Department of State, as well as my other grandfather on my father's side was also involved with the government, and he was a jurisprudence attorney. So I had a lot of connections, and it was a great life for me. They started me young tutoring French and English. When I was about 2 years old, I was wearing a suit by 4, so I was being prepped to be in the global world. And I thought to myself that we came to America and it was supposed to be this land of opportunities, the American dream, as they say. Well, the problem that happened, Bruce, is that this American dream turned into an American nightmare for me. And the reason I state that is when we came here, we had a lot of money. And what happened is we tried to start 2 businesses. First one was a martial arts studio, and then later on a liquor store. And this is within a period of time that we're in America, in short period. However, we ended up failing at both. So it was very difficult to be able to have this American dream when all your resources has been drained and you have no more, you could say, support. So my parents stated that we stay here and we pretty much die or we make something happen. So this is the opportunity that America gives us. And the small business that you've been talking about is actually something that I lived through. It gave us an opportunity to start something with nothing. I was homeless for a period of time and living in a green station wagon that looked like the Brady Mobile. My mother left my father, and I came during the 1970s. To be exact, it was 1972. And if you remember, Bruce, what era that was, it was the Vietnamese era. And that's not always good for me because my name was given in American, Charlie. And they believed that I was a VC, a Vat Cong, which means I'm the North Vietnamese. So I was the only Oriental kid from the age of 8 to 12 at school in Woodridge that pretty much said, you are the VC Charlie, so we can't hang around with you, and your life is going to be miserable here because why? You're the enemy. And my point was, wait a second, guys, you should be watching MASH, not Platoon. You got the wrong movie here. We're your friends, we're your allies. And that's what I started realizing. If you want to be able to get ahead and make the American dream happen with a small business or getting into certain schools, you have to start educating yourself. And it takes work. It takes a lot of work. I ended up going to school, studying mostly in the area of law and finance. And then I continued to be able to get an opportunity to work with the U.S. President's office. And then what I did is I got to be in trade areas of trade representative office, doing reports as well as analysis. So I learned more about the economy as well as opportunities in America with the government system that we have. And then I was advisor for about 5 years for Congress and acted as a co-chair of the Business Economic Council from 2008 to 2009. And then I just finished with the U.S. Department of State as a Fulbright specialist. And it was from 2018, 2023, working with Kosovo in the area of NATO forces in the area of international security. So I have a pretty comprehensive background. And when I came back to our country, I started realizing that we need more democracy in our country than overseas. I had a person ask me in a different interview, Charlie, what do you think is destroying democracy? And I stated that our system of people who are officials seem to have forgotten what it means to be a representative. Something that we need to do once again. The forefathers like John Adams, John Hancock, people like, Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, they had a concept to come together to unite to make a country. For example, HR 2966, and that is the American Enterprise First Act. And that states that people must show that they're a U.S. citizen or have proof of some documentation that they are a U.S. citizen to be able to get a business loan under 7A and 504 on the Small Business Administration loans. The problem is that's our tax money, and it's being given to people who are not even U.S. citizens. They want to give it to people who might be visa holders as well as undocumented. I have a family who has a small business, had a restaurant, Korean food restaurant, and they survived for 35 years, even during COVID. And they didn't even get that opportunity first. So that's one of the reasons that I'm running, and I advocate strongly for small businesses, for people who are American citizens and paying taxes.
What was your education that prepared you for the kind of State Department and government service roles that you had?
Well, I started out pretty much being molded for international business because most of my family members were in international business, and diplomacy because that was my other half of my family. I started learning French and English because, as you know, those are two main languages back, especially during the 60s and 70s after World War II. If you want to work at The Hague or the United Nations, you could say, you got to be prepared in those languages. It's the world language. My main background is I studied constitutional law, and then I went to the area of international law, comparative law. And I studied, fortunately, had an opportunity to study at a public school, Northern Illinois. And then what happened is I got an opportunity after working with like American Express, as well as the courthouses and appellate courts, which change lower court decisions on a federal level. I got an opportunity to go out to the East Coast. I spent some time over there and did very well at a school where I had a scholarship for MBA and my JD. In other words, graduate business school and graduate law school. Then what happened is I started applying to other schools because I needed a bigger name. Fortunately, I got into Harvard University, and you can't really beat Harvard when you get into that area of international. So I took the opportunity and I ended up studying in mediation, so-called dispute resolution at Harvard Law School. And I also studied the area of business at the Harvard Business School. But I started at the Harvard University in international politics, international economics.
And Charlie, I know there's even more on your website where folks can go and get more. So that allows me to jump into this question and then to the topic that I really want to pick your brain about. But the intermediate question is, in addition to the type of protection for the loans to make sure they go to American citizens, what are the top 2, 3, 4, 5 things that you want the people in your district to hear and to know? Oh, that's what Charlie wants to do. As my representative, I'm going to vote for Charlie. What are those things?
Two main reasons. I think we need to have that concept of bringing back America first. And I'm not saying that we need to cut off international ties. What I think is we have to start focusing to help our businesses as well as our communities. Because what I believe is if you care about your country, you have to care about your community. And it doesn't mean it's about you. It's not about me. It's about us. And in order to do that, we have to bring that mentality. I think one of the things that I told you before, why I got asked the question, what's destroying democracy? I stated caucuses. It's great to have all these interest groups. And you could have Black interest groups, Hispanic, and you could even have the Asian Pacific Islanders, which I've been asked to join a lot of times. But my problem is, I think it's dividing us, it's not uniting us. So the number one point is we have to stop dividing and start uniting. And when I hear people tell me, well, you got to stay strong and stay to your area of trying to be conservative, my point is, yes, I have conservative values. I promote certain things. I believe Trump's idea to be able to have manufacturing. The president has a good goal. But again, there's 220 votes that you need in the House of Representatives to be able to get a bill passed. That means you have to compromise. And if you think you're going to go in there and say, I'm not going to lean your way, they shouldn't lean your way, which means you get nothing done. And my objective is to get something done, which goes to the second point. I have a couple of bills that I know that I could work with, that I've even been helping with other Congress members out in our area, and even the Speaker's office I've talking to at times. The first one you have is the big, beautiful bill. That bill I worked on. It's not perfect, but there's a lot of advantages, and it will save money for people in the long run, as much as possibly 11,000 per household. So the point is that it is got the right idea. And that's one of my main points is we got to get back to that mentality that we're going to work together, help each other. And it hasn't been implemented. That's why I say the big, beautiful bill still needs work. We have the idea in place, but we need resources and even new departments possibly to implement to make that work correctly. The second thing that I believe we got to stop is what I was stating, is this thing with the area of the American Entrepreneurs First Act. We have to start focusing back to the people who are within our country and having a background in economics and knowing international finance. We have to keep the money circulating within our community. If we don't circulate it within our community, that means money's going out. When you have money going out, we end up devaluing our value. For example, if you have, just in simple terms, if you have $1 and that $1 is spent to you, Bruce, and you spend it over in your area, that's keeping within the United States. But if you take that dollar and put it to somewhere else, another country, that means that dollar's out of our system and we have to print a new dollar, which means it could devalue because we have more currency going out there. But don't get me wrong, political strategy is wise sometimes because that dollar can give us strength to have leverage, so-called, with other countries. But I believe those are the two main things that we need to do. Keep America first, and in order to do it, we have to change our mentality to work together. And I don't think we're doing that right now in Congress.
Thank you. 99.9% of all businesses in America are small businesses. Even better, 98% of all businesses have less than 100 employees. So we are a small business nation. And you had to go to Harvard and have international experience or international exposure to come back to your district and say, folks, it's all about the community, because there's just a big focus on big business and the big moves and Wall Street. And at the American Small Business League, let me get the audience up to speed real quick. At the American Small Business League, our focus is on stopping the diversion of federal small business contracts to big businesses. Big picture, 23% of all federal contract dollars are supposed to go to America's small businesses. And every year the SBA says, we've met that goal, pat on the back, how about a loan? And our 35 years of experience, the man who founded the ASBL, Lloyd Chapman, we've been organized for 20 years. We have found through 100 plus freedom of information, legal victories, and congressional investigations found the same thing. And the Inspector General Office at the SBA found this same fact, that every year, billions of dollars in federal contracts to small businesses go to the country's biggest businesses. In fact, it's the vast majority. real small businesses, 99% of all businesses don't get close to 23% of the federal contracts. Charlie, they really get about 3%, which means that 97% of the $800 billion, more or less, average procurement budget that the government spends for goods and services through contracts, 97% of that fortune goes to the 0.1% of companies that are big businesses. And it's a scandal and it's an outrage. And we hand it to you as a candidate on a silver platter to stay in touch with me, to look through everything on our website, to email me for more corroboration so that you get inspired. You may or may not do this, but we hope you will, to teach your constituents this, to run to clean this up and inspire and excite your constituents to say, look at the good things that would cause. Because, Charlie, for every 1% increase in contracts to our small businesses, 100,000 jobs get created. That's according to the chair of the Senate Small Business Committee back in 2010. So if 23% of those contract dollars actually went to our small businesses, that would be 2.3 million new jobs created to do that work, on top of the 2 million jobs that America creates every year anyway. In other words, an economic boom of gigantic proportions, tax-free, debt-free, deficit neutral. It just takes a president and an SBA administrator telling us the truth, exposing this. And it's been an uphill battle for 35 years. We can't do it alone, but we want to excite candidates like you. There's more I could say that I wrote to you about the focus on raising that amount to 33% by raising the amount that should go to women-owned small businesses from 5 to 15%. That would take the 23 to 33%. Had you heard anything like that before? And whether or not you had, what do you think of that?
I have heard that before, and I do take a strong interest in small businesses because I have a small business, mostly in logistics, as well as my mother cleaned apartments for 50 years as a woman business. One of the things that my grandfather, when he retired from the U.S. Department of State, he started getting more involved in the area of the executive program where you help businesses under the small business development centers. So I learned a lot about these things of how important it is to help your community. As I stated, Bruce, if you want to help your country, it starts with your community. And that's why maybe I'm old school, but I believe that in order to make a country grow, you have to start from your area. It's almost like a family value will grow to make a neighborhood, to make a nation. So my whole point is that I believe the same thing with small businesses. Now, there is some conflict, as you know, with the small business administration, because under the current administration with President Trump, he's trying to downsize a lot of bureaucracy. However, it is being given in the hands of states. There is a lot of support at states, but they're not functioning properly. That's the problem. So there's a lot of bureaucracy and wasted money.
I'm glad you mentioned the SBA because that's the focus of our federal concern, because they're the only agency whose exclusive mission is to protect the interests of our small businesses. And we are convinced through our experience and all of our studies that it's really something of a front. It really promotes what it does in backing loans that small businesses can get from local banks, and then the SBA backs that loan. The SBA doesn't give any loans, but it backs loans if you apply, et cetera, et cetera. And it makes it very difficult to find two things: what contracts are available for small businesses to apply for, and how do you go about becoming certified to apply for those contracts? All it basically does is say it's got some links, but then you get lost in the fog of the web pages. So it's not easy to find out what industries, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one of our planks, is to say, in addition to raising the amount that should go to women-owned businesses, which would raise the amount that goes to all small businesses from 23% to 33%. Charlie, we want a candidate to say, I will also work to make sure that the SBA and all federal agencies reveal the names of the businesses that they say they gave these small business contracts to. Because when our founders started suing and getting and winning this information in legal battles and saw they didn't give it to small businesses like they said they did, this particular contract or that particular contract. We had to go to court to get to see the information from the Pentagon, et cetera, that it really went to some of the world's biggest businesses. So, Charlie, what can you imagine doing to expose the truth about the small business contracts that are going to big businesses and helping do a couple of things? Raise the amount that should go to small businesses and change the official definition of a small business from 500 or 1,000 or 2,000, depending on the federal agency, down to 100 employees or less, because 98% of all of our businesses have 100 or less employees. And finally, demand that the SBA makes public the names of all businesses that get so-called small business contracts. Is that, talk to me about your predilection or your feelings about embracing that as a campaign issue?
I think it's important that we start supporting small businesses because what made our country great is that middle class small business. The bureaucracy is our main problem. There should be a list, there should be transparency. If the funds are given to small businesses and not being cloaked, you could say, from having some big corporation that has a subsidiary still getting the money, it's still going to the big company. We need to make sure it's going to that middle class. I think we need to also have a system where we have a loan basis, because when you give money out, that's our tax money. In order to be able to have our government function and stop taking more taxes from us, there has to be a repayment.
That's great to let the contracting issue lead to the next conversation and the next conversation about all the things that need to be cleaned up because they're mismanaged and the bureaucracy covers and hides a lot of sloshing around and slushing around of funds that aren't going really to the most efficient places. Well, it's a great heart of service you're describing there, Charlie, and I look forward to staying in touch with you. And I want to thank you very much for your time. And we're going to talk after I stop the recording. And now I will thank everybody for watching and listening today.